under the constitution and the laws of this country, there is a paramount obligation on the part of all institutions of the state to extend their maximum cooperation for the conduct of elections in this country. What has happened is the precise opposite of that. Neither in this country nor in any other democratic country in the recent past has there been such a concerted, systematic effort on the part of the executive branch of government to thwart the holding of a democratic election that is mandated by the law. It is only because of the united action in a spirit of complete solidarity by no fewer than 24 political parties and groups in the opposition, all coming together in unison, inspired, ignited by a common objective. It is because of the unrelenting efforts of all these groups within the opposition that we have been able to defeat this anti-democratic move by the government. We would like on this occasion to convey our grateful thanks and appreciation to all parties in the opposition who contributed in no small measure to the humiliating defeat which the government sustained with regard to its Machiavellian efforts not to hold an election that is compulsorily required by the laws of Sri Lanka. There is nothing they stopped short of. Every trick in the book and outside the book, every possible strategy was resorted to for the purpose of not holding this election. It began with a move to establish a delimitation commission in order to secure delays. Then they put forward the argument that the essential conditions for the conduct of this election do not exist because of a diversity of views within the election commission. They said that the commission must come to a common understanding before it is possible to proceed with the holding of the election. It was an absolute lie, a complete untruth. Within a couple of days, the Election Commission was able to publish not one but 3 gazettes, which were all signed by the chairman of the commission and all the other members. So that was a conclusive demonstration of unanimity on the part of all the members of the commission. Then an imaginary problem was created, and the government told the commission that they must obtain legal advice from the Attorney General and from nobody else. The government made a most reprehensible effort to get the Attorney General to act in a partisan manner, in a manner that would seriously detract from the prestige, the stature, and the integrity of the office of Attorney General. The government then tried to prevent the Elections Commission from obtaining the services of private counsel, forcing them to go to the Attorney General. Next came the disgraceful episode connected with Neil Bandara Hapuhinna, the Secretary to the Ministry of Public Administration and Local Government. Mr. Hapuhinna committed what is undoubtedly a criminal act. He sent written instructions to all district secretaries in this country, instructed them forthwith to discontinue, to stop accepting deposits from prospective candidates for this election. That was to bring the entire electoral process to a standstill, a criminal act. He sought to take refuge under a purported decision of the Cabinet of Ministers. But he was confronted with a straightforward denial on the floor of Parliament by the line minister, that is Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, who categorically asserted that no such decision had ever been made by the Cabinet of Ministers. When Mr. Hapuhinna tried to thwart the electoral process of this country on the basis of a non-existent cabinet decision and thereby exposed himself clearly to liability for an offence under the 21st Amendment to the Constitution, an offence which carries the penalty of 3 years imprisonment. An attempt was then made to replace the current Elections Commission with a new commission. And the expedient adopted was to use the newly appointed Constitutional Council very hastily to summon applications to evaluate them, and while the electoral process is ongoing, to do away with the current commission and to appoint a new commission, a procedure which is frankly deplorable. When that failed, as a result of strong resistance from representatives of the opposition in the Constitutional Council, there was extreme intimidation of the members of the Election Commission of a degree which would inevitably prevent them from discharging their allotted functions without fear or favour. Mrs. Sarojini Charles, a member of the Commission, relinquished her post while the electoral process is going on. A unique event. She was there, she served the Commission, she took all the benefits that she was entitled to as a member of the Commission. Then when her services were required the most, when an election was due to take place very shortly, she chooses that moment to send in her resignation. Does anybody believe that this was spontaneous and voluntary? Or was it a response to extreme pressure? Then came the most frightening development of all, an event which has never at any time taken place in the history of our country, an event which we are thoroughly ashamed of, that is death threats, not any other kind of threat. Death threats are employed against members of the Commission. You discharge your functions, you hold the election as you are required to do by the Constitution of this country, you will pay the supreme price. You will not live. You will be killed. Death threats were received by 3 members of the Commission. There seems to be some evidence that a threatening telephone call came from abroad. But over and above that, one of the members of the Commission was visited at 1 o'clock in the night by an intruder who entered his garage and took photographs. So that was the environment that was created as a precursor to the conduct of this election. When all of this failed, when the members of the Commission demonstrated to the country and to the world that they were made of sterling fibre and were not amenable to these dastardly threats, the next step was taken, that is to starve the Commission of the resources that are required even for the initial expenses of the Commission relating to the conduct of the local government poll on the 9th of March. They were starved of resources. Now I want to say that public officials who like to score brownie points and ingratiate themselves with a government which will last a few more months, you are most welcome to do so. But kindly remember that in terms of the judgment that was handed down unanimously by 7 judges of the Supreme Court in the Easter Sunday case, if you do that, you must accept personal liability. which means the payment of compensation. But in some cases, compensation will not suffice. You will go to jail if you are convicted for an offense under the constitution of this country. This is not a threat. It is an objective statement of the law of this country. Mr. Neil Bandara Hapuhinna already has a case on his hands, a case that is brought against him by Mr. Mujibur Rahman, former member of parliament. Now I want to state this categorically, merely as an accurate statement of the law of this country. Yesterday, the Elections Commission for the second time gave a solemn undertaking to the Supreme Court that they are firmly resolved to hold this election. And they are in the process of taking all the steps that are necessary methodically, sequentially to ensure that that election will take place. And the court unequivocally endorsed that view. That is the law of the land which has to be complied with, and elections have to be held. But in order to do so, as a practical matter, financial resources are required. Parliament has already allocated these resources in the budget which was passed in December 2022. It is now the compulsory obligation of the Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Mahinda Sirivardhana, to make those resources available to the Elections Commission for the purpose of conducting this election. If he fails, neglects, or refuses to do so, he is clearly violating Article 104 of the Constitution of the Republic of Sri Lanka and a variety of other laws. And again, in keeping with the norms which are explicitly spelled out by the unanimous Supreme Court judgment which I already referred to, the Easter Sunday judgment, he must accept personal responsibility for his failure to comply with the paramount law of the land. Now, why is it that the government went to these extraordinary lengths? All those efforts have failed, but why did they make those attempts to prevent this election from being held on the 9th of March? Because they are well aware that although this is in form a local government election, to elect the chairman and members of municipalities, of Pradesh Sabhas and other local bodies, actually the results of this election carry consequences which extend far beyond the local government domain. This is an opportunity for the people of our country to pass judgment on the performance of this government. Are they satisfied or are they profoundly dissatisfied? We know, not wishful thinking, we know from dispassionate scientific surveys which have been done that the threshold of support enjoyed in the country at large by both components of the present government, the elephant and the lotus bud, both put together, do not have a support base which exceeds 15% of the voters of this country. It is now a matter of conjecture, speculation, different views. But once the results of the local government election come in on the 9th of March, there will be no speculation. It will be crystal clear what the factual situation is. It will thereafter no longer be possible for a government which has been so decisively and contemptuously rejected by the people of our country to continue to rule this land. It will become abundantly clear that the composition of parliament is horrendously distorted. It is no reflection of public opinion. It has no nexus with the people. It has no mandate. It is completely lacking in legitimacy. What will happen next is crystal clear, it is unavoidable. There will be a huge demand, a cry in the country at large for the dissolution of this obsolete parliament. It is debased currency, and a demand to allow the people of the country the opportunity of electing a parliament of their choice will be truly reflective of their opinions and aspirations. However much the government would like to resist, they will not be able to do so. And by the middle of this year, there will definitely be a parliamentary election, which is necessary. It is a necessary condition for the country to move ahead. Reflect for a moment on the total chaos, the turmoil in every vital sector of Sri Lanka's economy. The port of Colombo, the banks, the hospitals, the universities, the water board, the Ceylon Electricity Board, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, the postal services. It is a sea of discord. Now, in order to resolve these problems, you really want, the first requirement is a government that is responsive to the needs of the people, a government with which the people identify, a government which has the understanding, the empathy, and the compassion. Without it, no problem can be solved. It is because the government is well aware of this reality that they are doing everything in their power to prevent the holding of this election. Now, we went to these extraordinary lengths, expending effort, energy, in order to go to court. I myself went to court. I was a petitioner, not alone, but with other parties in the opposition. Why did we do this? Because we were fighting against a principle that would have been the death knell of democracy in this country. The government was arguing for the first time that elections will be held not according to time frames which are stipulated by the law, but only when the government feels able to spend money for the conduct of an election. This means when an election takes place is entirely in the hands of the government in power. It is a matter of absolute discretion. If that is the case, no election is going to be held in this country in the future, and the presidential election will definitely not be held if this new principle was allowed to become entrenched. This is why all groups in the opposition got together to defeat this utterly destructive principle. Now we have only about 24-25 days left for the election to take place. I ask the people of our country to shed any doubts which they may have hitherto entertained about whether this election will take place or not. It is definitely, absolutely going to take place on the 9th of March. Let us therefore use that opportunity to make it very clear what we think of the government that is now in power. This is only the first step, and it will trigger a series of events which will culminate in the emergence towards the middle of this year of a truly democratic representative government which will have the resolve, the capability, the strength to get to grips with the burning issues of our country today.